I'm never going back to my friend's lake house. My friend Jake's grandparents own a lake house his family shares, and after we graduated high school, Jake decided it'd be fun to spend a weekend there with a few friends. It was almost like one last celebration before we all went our separate ways for college. Jake's parents were nice enough to let us spend the weekend alone, so it was just the 6 of us. I arrived a bit late on Saturday, so I was only able to swim for a little bit before it got dark and we started a fire pit. Jake had raided his grandparents' fridge and got us a few drinks, and before long, we were joking, sharing stories, and enjoying the night. As it got later, my friend Sam looked over at the water and we all followed her gaze. Just off the shore, a man in a small, weathered fishing boat was looking at us. He was sitting completely still, watching us. There was no sound of a motor, no fishing gear, nothing to explain why he was there. It was as if he'd drifted in from out of nowhere. We stared at him until finally, without a word, he turned on a motor and disappeared back into the night. Once he was gone, we joked to relieve the tension, calling him the residential lake creeper, and guessing why he would be out in the dark. Soon, we forgot about him and carried on. But a while later, we heard water splashing and the hum of a small motor getting louder. We all looked over, and sure enough, the man was back. He was closer this time. It was hard to make out his face, but we knew his eyes were locked on us. Finally, Sam called out, "Can we help you?" The man stopped, silent, and slowly gave us a small wave like you'd give your neighbor. Jake stood up and shouted, "You need to get the hell out of here, man. This is private property." The man didn't respond. He just stood there, staring, before slowly shaking his head no. The gesture was terrifying, but the threat was enough for him to turn the boat and head back into the darkness. By that point we had enough, so, grabbing our stuff, we quickly put the lid on the fire and hurried inside, locking the doors behind us. Most of us went upstairs to get a better look, knowing he probably was still out there. From the window, we scanned the lake, thinking he was gone for a second, until one of our friends pointed toward the shore. He was still there, gliding along the edge of the property, gaze never leaving the house. It was like watching an animal circle its prey. We went downstairs, debating whether to call the police, and rushed back up to check on him. He'd slowed down now, drifting closer. Then he bent down, picking something up. It was an old harpoon. He lifted it up as if he wanted us to see, and we knew there was no doubt anymore, he was threatening us. Jake immediately dialed 911. I stayed at the window, watching him. The man started twirling the harpoon between his fingers like a baton. When Sam whispered, "Oh, my God," I looked back and saw the man had tied his boat to the dock. He was stepping out, walking toward the house. As he was getting closer, a couple of my friends were saying we should try and rush him or lie and say that we have a gun. But before we could decide what to do, he was there. Knock, knock, knock. A light tap on the door which sounded almost polite. Then, in a low, friendly voice, he said, "Hello. Can I come in? It's cold out here." Nobody answered. The knock came again. "Please let me in. I just want to talk." Slowly, he moved around the house and we could hear the tip of the harpoon drag across the rock path as he circled the house. "Won't you let me in? I promise I won't hurt you." We were all hiding in the living room in the center of the house, away from any windows, but my other friend decided to yell out, "The police are on their way," so I would leave if I were you. I'm not certain it was loud enough for him to hear it from outside, but the tapping stopped. After a moment, a couple of us decided to run upstairs to see if his boat was still there, and I really wish we hadn't. We peeked out and saw that he was halfway down the path, still dragging the spear behind him, but stopped halfway. He turned around and raised the harpoon and threw it. It struck the side of the house with a thud, embedding itself into the wood so hard that the end of it was still vibrating. We jumped backwards from the window but quickly ran back to see what else he was doing. He got back into the boat and began circling the house even slower. Back and forth, like he was trying to take the moment in. He came to a stop, and the way he was looking at the house, it felt like he could see us through the window. Then he turned the boat and drifted off back into the night. The police weren't very helpful. They took our story, briefly searched the perimeter, told us to call if he came back, and took the spear as evidence. Unsurprisingly, that was the last time I went to that lake house and I don't plan on ever going back. As far as I know, they've never seen the man again, but remembering the way he circled the house and the scratching sound of him dragging the harpoon across the rock path still gives me chills.